Parshas Balak speaks about Bilam being called to curse Klal Yisrael. And at the end, he ends up blessing them. This is an underlying concept that the Western mind is not used to. A curse and a blessing. Magic. Spells. The Western mind thinks that humanity has already gone beyond these primitive ideas. But in reality, we've simply forgotten how life works. And so we might misunderstand these concepts, but these concepts are very real. These concepts are how the world runs, still, till this day. All of us, right now, are under some very, very heavy spells. Magical spells. Spells placed on us over decades. If we weren't under these spells, then we wouldn't be able to interact with society. We wouldn't even understand what's wrong with these people. And so the reason we think that spells are not real is because we're so heavily under the spells that we can't even distinguish anymore what is real and what is just a spell. We've lost contact with the spiritual. And so to be under a spell simply means that there is a thought form, there's an idea, there's a concept that is recorded in our mind, and we see reality through that thought form. We don't see reality directly, we see it through a lens that was created through an experience or through speech. Speech is the most direct way of casting a spell. So if I speak to a child, it's immediately obvious as I start talking that they are falling under a spell. The children, it's more obvious than by adults. But the children completely go into that reality. They experience life from that perspective. And then it doesn't disappear. The effect of that experience remains within the child. And depending on how much emotion was involved in that experience, one experience can transform a person's life. And that's because a thought form is ingrained so deeply within the world of thought, with so much attention, with so much spiritual force, that it completely transforms the perception of that individual. And so everything that we experience is imprinting something on the spirit. That imprint is a spell. That imprint is not a reality. It doesn't reflect the nature of reality. It's simply an anecdotal experience. And so, just like on the individual level, we are under spells, also, and in a way even more so, in a much deeper way, the collective is under a spell. The collective is under many spells. And in the ancient world, people knew not only how to create specific spells for individuals, but also how to implant spells in the collective. People knew how to cast spells on the individuals because the individual souls were still much cleaner, they were much more pure, much less information was processed by a soul in the ancient world than by a soul in the modern world. So they weren't so overrun with spells, so they could still distinguish the spells, they could still see the effects of the spells. And so they understood. The priests would understand all the different spells that can be placed on a human being and what would be the effect of that spell. What happens if you believe this and what happens if you believe that? How does that affect the internal organs? How does it affect the experience? How does it feel? So they would be able to create texts or rituals in order to affect the spirit, in order to create an experience for the spirit, to create the reality for the spirit. These rituals, these spells, became the basis of what later became religion. Religion is a set of spells that we sign up for in order to enter an experience. An experience that's going to guide our spirit to a specific location in the world of thought. And so Bilam was an expert at placing spells within the collective, spells that would affect the destiny of nations. Because just like the forces within our mind are competing for our attention, the nations of the world are competing for the spiritual power of the collective. Which nation is going to be the superpower? Which nation is going to be in charge of all the other nations? And so they're all competing for power from the intelligence that created them. And this competition happens in the world of thought. And Bilam, by knowing the secrets of the world of thought and knowing how to transcend to some very high levels within the collective, within the world of thought, and we all have these connections, all of our brains are hooked into the collective because it's part of our thinking, it's part of how we can form our thoughts, is that we also have unconscious areas that tap into the collective that some people learned how to make conscious. And so when they became conscious in those places, they could implant messages into those places. And those messages would affect the events in the objective reality. And so when he was called to bring Klal Yisrael down, he went to do his usual routine. He knew his rituals, he knew his exercises to stay fit in the world of thought, to be able to create with the intention of the Spirit the appropriate idea, the appropriate concept that will be implanted into the collective, and then that should result in Klal Yisrael being eliminated. But instead, he receives messages that are the exact opposite of his intention. And so when he's implanting, when he's casting the spell is not in accordance with the desire of his spirit. The spell is in accordance with the desire of the spirit within all spirits. And this is something that the ancient nations didn't realize. The ancient nations knew about the world of thought. Nobody knew the world of thought better than the Egyptians. They studied every possibility, every manifestation, every belief, every concept, every substance that can be used to manipulate perception. They studied everything. But what they didn't know was that there was a force beyond the world of thought that is making sure that within the world of thought certain things shouldn't happen. And one of those things is that Klal Yisrael cannot be eliminated. This is part of the fabric of creation. This was ingrained in a place that no human being can enter. This cannot be erased. This cannot be changed. This is because Chazal say, Yisrael ola b'machshava tchila. Yisrael ola b'machshava tchila means Yisrael arose in the world of thought before any other concepts. Meaning, there was a perfect reality that presented itself in the world of thought before the world of thought made any commitment to this reality. And so that perfect reality is the beginning of the world of thought. The world of thought created nothing unless it aligns with that destiny that is this perfect reality. And so even though we can go into the world of thought and we can implant there whatever it is that we want to implant, it cannot contradict the original intention of the world of thought itself that caused it to come into existence. It only came into existence because of a concept called Yisrael. And so nothing in the world of thought can fight Yisrael. If not for Yisrael, there would be no world of thought. And this Bilam didn't realize until he tried. He tried to do what usually works. And yet here it didn't work. Not only did it not work, the message that came back was, what you're trying to do is never going to happen. What you're trying to do cannot happen. What you're trying to do contradicts the nature of reality itself. And so that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he made the bris with Avraham, when he created this special relationship that through him, Klal Yisrael is going to come into reality. So he said, those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed. Because Yisrael has to be. So as soon as Avraham Avinu is the one that's going to bring Yisrael, it automatically means that if you align with him, you're aligned with reality. If you're not aligned with him, you're against reality. Avraham Avinu suddenly became reality. Because reality is based on a concept called Yisrael, on a concept of perfect intelligence, where humanity can actually be the design that was originally intended. That's the only reason anything exists. And so, existence, access to existence, security within existence, that's the ultimate blessing. And anything that's against that is the ultimate curse. And so this blessing is ingrained within the fabric of reality. This blessing is beyond the world of thought. This blessing is the reason there is a world of thought. So no thought can contradict this blessing. There's nobody that can go to any level that's ever going to contradict this blessing. And so Bilam says, Lahi b'tovim b'Yakov, l'ro amo b'Yisrael. He doesn't see any wrong in them. He can't see any wrong in them. If they're too wrong for him, then this whole project doesn't make sense. So he can't see it. It's like somebody is so invested in something, even if it doesn't work, they just can't see it. They're in denial. When he is looking at us, he can't see our faults. Because if he sees our faults, then life doesn't make sense. And so we have a relationship here that is a lot better than we think. But even though the curse cannot affect the relationship, the curse can affect how we think of the relationship. And in that sense, we've been cursed. All of exile is one big curse. All of exile is one big spell on the human mind. A spell that makes him angry and aggressive and bitter. It's just a spell, it's just a story, but it's a horrible story, and it's a story that's been bought into by millions of people. So in that sense, the curse is very real. On our minds, unfortunately, the spell is very real. But in reality, the relationship is very different. If we knew the relationship, we wouldn't be the way that we are. We are only the way that we are because we think the relationship is different than what it is. He doesn't see our faults, and yet we judge ourselves constantly. So we need to return to the world of thought and clean ourselves off. Remove the spells. Rise beyond the thought forms that constrict us, that make us think we're little, that make us forget our power, make us forget who we are, how important we are, how much the only one who matters really cares about us. You basically bet the entire farm on us. And it's a big farm. Trillions and trillions of galaxies. All riding on human beings getting it right. Human beings getting released from the negative spells they're placing on themselves. We think, how could it make sense? Trillions and trillions of stars for a tiny human? The tiny human himself is trillions and trillions of atoms, of molecules, of cells. The one who created us has no problem with quantity. There's no number that phases him. But somehow, everything that we can see, everything we can observe with our physical eyes is represented in the world of thought. It represents a concept. Every star, every planet, everything that's in space represents something in the world of thought, including each one of us. Each one of us represents a very big and complex something in the world of thought. An entire energy system. The complexity of what's going on in our world of thought is much more complex than what's going on in a star. Because in our world of thought, all the stars are mingling together, having conversations with themselves, coming to conclusions, creating emotions. It's a lot of busyness. So it's on us to wake up. To wake up from the dream, from the spells, from the stories, from the narratives. To come back to our potential, to open up to the infinite possibilities, to look at life again with fresh eyes. Because we are the blessing. We just have to learn how not to buy into the curse. And this is within our power. This is what we were designed to do. We have the intelligence to do this. So may we all find the path. May we all find the way to release ourselves from our bondage so we can be redeemed. May it happen soon.